Essex village of Purley may not at first sight seem the ideal place for commercial winemaking, but as new Hall Vineyard owner Piers Greenwood relates, the village is the site of an ancient vineyard.
There used to be a vineyard here in Purley from about 1260 onwards, and it was next to Purley Church to the top of the hill there. And when my father moved here in '69, we looked in the parish records to find out what had been grown here before in the past, and we found out about this vineyard, and so we planted our first vines down here, especially since King John I commissioned this vineyard, because he owned it at the time, to produce 2 barrels of wine for the signing and the celebrations of the Magna Carta. One of the main reasons is this site is one of the driest spots in the country, and it benefits from the fact that Danbury Hill, not being too far away, splits an awful lot of the prevailing wind clouds and all the rain. And one lot goes over the Blackwater estuary and the other lot goes over the Crouch, leaving Purley very, very dry. And we get an average rainfall of only 17.5 inches of rain a year, whereas Danbury get nearly 22 inches of rain a year, and they're only 2 miles away. But it helps with the quality of the wine we produce here, incredibly, being such a dry site. The site is only within 3 miles of the coast. It benefits the fact that in the spring we get some sea mists, and in the autumn as well, which prevents frost damage on the vines, which means that we generally get a crop every year. We are by far the largest vineyard in East Anglia, but we're probably about the 3rd or 4th largest in the whole country.
Towards the end of September, when the leaves are turning to gold, pickers of all ages and nationalities gather to bring in the harvest. Some camp on the site for the whole season. Duncan explains the picking process.
Yeah, so we're picking Muller Thurgau grapes today. All the grapes have been picked by hand. We've got about 50 people working on the vineyard at the moment. We're generally finding from these rows here we're getting about 1/4 of a tonne from each row. We're in a 20-acre field, so we'd look to be getting about 40 or 50 tonnes from the entire field. The grapes that we're making today are actually going to be sold on to another winery down in Kent. So we'll pick them, we'll put them onto the back of the trailer in these bins, which hold about 300 kilos each. We'll take them down to the winery, weigh them in so we know exactly how many grapes have come off the field, and then we'll load them onto our lorry, and they'll get taken to the winery who we have a supply contract with. Tomorrow we'll be picking grapes to make into wine for ourselves at our own winery, and again, the same system. We'll load the grapes into the buckets, onto these trailers, take them down to the winery, and they'll be pressed on that same day. So it's very important that we process the grapes on the day that we pick them, so that they're in the best possible state and they give us the clearest grape juice, which will make the best wine for us.
An average pick is 50 to 70 buckets a day, but the record is 178. The pickers are an enthusiastic bunch.
Oh, I used to work for British Aerospace. I was an engineer, and decided to have a bit of a career change, so I resigned from that. My wife and I sold our house and bought a big motorhome, and we've been doing that for about 2 years now. So we did strawberries earlier in the year, and we're doing the grapes, and then after we're finished here, we're off to the Algarve till April. That's the plan. So it's a good life.
As filled buckets are collected, a token is given to the picker. At the end of the day, the tokens are exchanged for wages. The buckets are then tipped into the trailer-mounted bins and are taken to the winery. In the winery, grapes are first separated from the stalks and the leaves. These are ejected into a box as the grapes and juice fall into a hopper below. From here, the juice is pumped straight to the grape press. The press holds 8 tons of grapes, and it takes 3 hours to extract all the juice from a full load. The juice is then pumped into a settling tank, and after 48 hours is put into a clean stainless steel fermentation tank.
The fermentation would normally then start on the clear juice, and that will probably take anything up to about 12 weeks. Now, if we check the temperature of the wines, make sure they don't go over 22 degrees Celsius, and if they do, We try to keep a cool fermentation, and therefore we then start cooling the tanks down to make sure the fermentation lasts as long as possible. The yeast which we use here will be tolerant up to about 11% alcohol, and therefore the fermentations would normally stop just prior to that. The winery in here, we've got enough room in these tanks to make over 140,000 bottles of white wine or red wine per year, still wine. But a proportion of these tanks will be made into actually sparkling wine. We've been making sparkling wine since 1985. We're one of the first vineyards in England to ever make a sparkling wine using traditional varieties of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It is slowly grown, and where we normally make our still wines in these tanks, we also make our sparkling wines in these tanks. But the difference is we don't go up to 11% in alcohol with the sparkling wines, we only go up to about 9% because we're going to have a second fermentation within the bottle. So once the fermentation is finished in these tanks, we then filter the wines through the diatomaceous earth wine filter, which does the coarse and medium filtrations, and then through a plate filter with ultrafine paper sheets, which makes sure we take out all the proteins and all the other bits and pieces which might be in the wine which might mess it up, and then through a membrane filter. From there, the sparkling wines will then be bottled again with a champagne yeast, where it'll then ferment a second time in the bottle, taking the alcohol from about 9% up to about 11%. During that process, it takes over a year to actually make it. Now, we normally make about 5,000 bottles of sparkling wine a year, but this year's harvest, we're hoping to make just over 15,000 bottles with a bit of luck, because that will be ready for the 2012 Olympics.
After filtration, the wine is ready for the bottling machine. New Hall normally produces around 100,000 bottles of wine each year, 30,000 for direct sales to individual customers, and a balance of 70,000 bottles for the leaseholders. 10% of the wine is bottled on site at a rate of 7,000 bottles a day. The rest of the wine goes to a bottling plant in Corby, thus saving on production costs. The wine for direct sales is stored in the cellar underneath the farmhouse, from where wine can be purchased throughout the year. The Christmas wine sale weekend is a major event in the vineyard calendar, with wine tasting, wine sales, refreshments and countless novelties and amusements for children. It's a great opportunity for everyone to stock up for Christmas.
So you want one of the rosé, which I don't know which one that is.
This event attracts long-standing customers and people visiting for the first time.
It's my first time to the opening. I have bought the wine before because a friend of mine introduced me to it and realised we have lovely local wine. So I use it for Christmas presents, and I haven't had any complaints yet. So it's delicious wine.
Some visitors are clearly surprised by the quality of the wine.
Oh, it's very nice actually.
Yeah.
It's a very nice wine.
Think of that.
Once the leaves have fallen from the vines, cold weather and frost turns the new wood brown. Then the important winter job of pruning begins.
So what we're doing at the moment is pruning the vines. These are Muller Thurgau grapevines. They're about 25 years old, and we basically, with our pruning, we chop away about 95% of the previous season's growth, and that keeps the vine in a cycle in which it produces fruit year on year. If we didn't prune the vines, they'd get into a vegetative cycle where they'd only produce foliage and they wouldn't produce fruit. So we're almost tricking the vines into thinking they're dying, and that makes them produce fruit year on year. It's the most important job that we do on the vineyard all year, because the way that you prune a vine determines how much fruit you're going to get in the following year, and it also determines to a large part the quality of the fruit that you'll get.
A team of 8 or 10 people using electric secateurs take 3 to 4 months to do the job. Each vine takes about 15 minutes to prune, and there are 150,000 vines in 600 rows. All the pruned vines are then bent to the wires and securely tied down. By mid-March, buds are beginning to swell. In early May, the buds are bursting and the leaves are appearing. Soon the vines are clothed with leaves again and the flowers are forming. Meanwhile, the main barn has been a hive of activity. 100,000 bottles of wine to be labelled, 30,000 for new hall sales, and 70,000 with individually designed labels for leaseholders. Each leaseholder owns one or more rows of vines and can request up to 4 different labels for each row. The staff ensure that the correct labels are fixed to each owner's choice of wine. Leaseholders collect their wine on an agreed weekend in the middle of May. Some take advantage of a tasting during their visit, and the gathering becomes quite a social occasion.
We rent a row each year, and from each row we get about 200 bottles plus, and the beauty of it is that we can have the quality of the wine we want. We can have the dry, medium dry or sweet, and we can put our own labels on, which is wonderful, and we give them to people at Christmas. But the quality of the wine has certainly improved over the last 4 years, and of course it's quite a treat to get something that's grown so locally.
In the summer months, special guided tours are on offer, making a very enjoyable group outing. Tours usually happen in the evening and include a generous wine tasting and a meal if it is wanted. In the vineyard, work continues with summer pruning. An impressive French machine keeps the rows open. Farm manager Darryl Kemp explains the process.
Today we're doing what we call summer pruning or side trimming. This is a process of cutting off this year's green growth. We do that to allow access for machinery and people to get down the rows. As the vines, being a climber, they want to join together and spread out everywhere. And also we want the sunlight to get into the developing bunches and help them ripen. And also if we need to spray for whatever reason, it allows better access for the spray to do a better job. The machine we're using is basically a very big hair cutting tool with swinging mower blades, so it can do both sides and the top all at once, and it's able to adjust up and down, left and right.
Newhall's English Wine Festival is held at the beginning of September each year. It is a celebration of another successful season's viticulture and winemaking. Between 2,000 and 3,000 visitors attend this open day. It is a great family day out with live entertainment, a craft fair, tractor rides and plenty of wine tasting.
That was a Pinot Noir. That's not, yeah.
Great.
Wonder how-
What do you think of the wine? Do you like it, or?
Yes, very nice.
We're coming here for about 5 years now.
5 years?
Yeah.
And we come all the way over from Kent to come here.
The annual competition of the East Anglian Wine Growers Association was held at Wisset Vineyard in Suffolk this year. The judges and Master of Wine Anthony Foster praised the entries, with 3 achieving gold awards.
Its quality is quite exceptional, and I'm talking about quite exceptional on a world stage. I do an awful lot of judging, as does Robin, of wines from all over the world, and these wines are not just clever for East Anglia. These wines are seriously good wines on a world stage and represent extraordinarily good value for money too.
And the Berwick Trophy this year has been awarded to New Hall, who won a gold medal with their Chardonnay 2009.
New Hall is certainly setting new and high standards in English wine production. Long may it continue.